Welcome guys, gals and non-binary pals to this week's episode of Buffy Boys, your weekly review of Buffy the Vampire Slayer from a queer, literary and feminist perspective. My name is Joel, one of your hosts, and with me as always is my long-suffering co-host.
Brian, hi, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Yeah, okay.
What is the most exciting thing that's happened to you today?
Had a sandwich.
Yeah, I was going to say the sandwich we had as well.
I think that's, I think it'd be disingenuous to say anything but the sandwich.
Yeah. So we're here to talk about Buffy the Vampire Slayer. You know it, you love it. It is season 6, episode 14, Older and Far Away. So before we head over to the bronze for our much loved banter segment, do you want to hit us with that Buffy Ann summary?
For sure. So, this episode was first released on February the 12th, 2002. It was written by Drew Z. Greenberg, who last wrote Smashed, and was directed by Michael Gershman, who last directed Intervention. And here is your Buffy Ann summary. Riley returns happily... Nope, that is wrong.
It's the wrong episode.
So the book that we have lists the episodes in the wrong order. So they have season 6, episode 14 as being As You Were, which is the next episode, where Riley does return. But now this week, it is Older and Far Away. Buffy fights a demon which hides in its sword. Her birthday party starts and goes on for hour after hour as no one can leave. The demon escapes from the sword and causes mayhem until Buffy traps it again. Dawn's fear of abandonment have called Halfrick a vengeance demon who appears to gloat and is caught by her own spell, which she breaks. That's all. Pretty straightforward.
Pretty accurate. So for our bronze badge this week, we want to discuss, as we are wont to do, Want. Yeah, I always like second guess myself on it these days. We stumbled upon a little program called Servant.
Yeah, we did indeed. It is an Apple original, so it's on Apple TV, I presume.
Where do you get Apple TV piped? Where do you get it pure? Like, where does it come from?
So, a couple of things there. One is, I presume it's just a subscription service that you know, it's one of the things that are offered to you on the tiles on your TV or your laptop or whatever. Additionally, I believe you can get like Apple TV sticks, and the same way that you get like a Chromecast that do that kind of thing.
Crazy.
I don't really know much about it. Apple TV, I think that's what it is.
I am picturing a TV that looks like a big apple. So.
Yeah, well, that's also good. So it first aired in 2019. It stars many people who are not Lauren Ambrose, but mostly Lauren Ambrose, who is most well known for having acted in 6 Feet Under. She played Claire Fisher, who, of course, when I was 16, I thought was like the coolest person that ever lived. And upon subsequent rewatchings of 6 Feet Under, I've realised that she's the most insufferable child in any property of all time.
She's a teen to ager. That's true.
Unusually, the TV show stars Rupert Grint as one of the lesser characters.
Support characters, yeah.
Who is obviously Ron Weasley from Harry Potter. It's the only thing I've seen him acting in since Harry Potter. M. Night Shyamalan directed and produced a lot of the episodes, which I would say don't hold it against the show in the sense that, like, yes. Oh, sorry. Well, let's go back to the beginning. It is a horror show. Mm-hmm. It is pure horror show with not a lot of complexity, not a lot of nuance to it so far. It's just focused on building up a creepy atmosphere, and I appreciate that.
Yeah, clear premise
for sure. The couple live in Philadelphia, and they have recently lost an infant. And the Claire Fisher, who's playing a character called Dorothy. Lauren Ambrose is playing a character called Dorothy, is essentially in denial that her child has died, so they've gotten a replacement doll baby, essentially.
Like a terribly realistic looking doll. Like, you're expecting, like, okay, this woman's catatonic because she's lost her child, she's replaced it with a doll. You're expecting like a child's toy. This is like, you know, this is use sex doll technology. You know, it's
okay.
It's accurate. It's right. It's where the industry gets.
You shouldn't say that, Joel. So she's going back to work, and they get a childminder, or a live-in childminder, who is the titular servant, who is a creepy 18-year-old girl who starts putting weird crosses all over the place, and the baby comes back to life.
Yeah, or at the very least,
or there is a baby there.
Yeah, it's a very early twist. It's kind of the premise of the show that the baby, that Claire Fisher, i.e. Dorothy, the mother, acts as if the baby is still alive, and then by the end of the episode the husband's been like, let's just go along with it, and then he's like, oh fuck, there's an actual child here, what does that mean? But is he losing his marbles, or is the servant doing something, or is Lauren Amber, etc, etc, etc.
It's really silly, it's kind of stupid, and I'm really enjoying it so far.
And also the episodes are only 30 minutes, which is kind of a selling point. I think it's like a nice little kind of like a horror morsel.
Yeah, exactly. And there are 2 seasons so far, so we're going to watch through those and we'll report back certainly as we watch and let everyone know what we think. I'm enjoying it. It's simple, straightforward. It's a beautiful house to live in, which is also nice to see. Speaking of, actually, we're moving from our apartments soon, so there may be intermittent episodes of Buffy Boys for the next couple of months, I would say. We'll update everyone. We'll update the Superfangs, all 4 of them, on Twitter as we go on. But for the most part, just it might be inconsistent.
But all for good reason, exciting new phase, etc.
Yeah, all that stuff.
Or as one of my colleagues told me today when I told them I was moving, oh, you're going to be a grown up now because you're living in a house. It's like, thanks for that.
Yeah,
thank
absolutely.
you. So yeah, it's going to be like a fun and stressful time after a lot of nothing for a long time.
Nothing has happened for quite a long time, repeatedly.
Yeah, very much so. We appreciate your support with that as we make that move.
Yeah, you can send all donations to paypal.com/gofuckyourmother, as I believe I listed last time.
I snatched up that URL. And yet otherwise I suppose like we're very not taxing our brains in some ways. Isn't that the other way we're spending our free time is we're playing through a little indie title called Resident Evil 8.
Well, it's not called Resident Evil 8 at all. It's called Resident Evil Village.
Resident Evil 8-age, Ville 8-age, whatever. Yeah,
Village is how you pronounce it. Yeah.
And yeah, we're only partway through it now. But
remember that like incredibly cursed image, which is the person being like, oh, we wanted to give our child an interesting name, so we called her Caitlin, but they put the 8 in the name as being Roman numerals, so it's KVIIILYN.
Pretty terrible.
Yeah, incredible.
So yeah, similar vibes from Resident Evil 8 Village. But yeah, it's fun so far. It's a theme park ride. It has jumpy moments, which is I really appreciate. Yeah, you've screamed a lot.
That's gonna go.
You've screamed a lot.
I just find her really scary. There's a big boobied lady as the main the main antagonist at the start. People became very obsessed with her, Lady Demostrastus or something like that. And yeah, and she's very, very, very big in stature, and she just follows you around, and
she's 2.5 meters tall, and like her cleavage is emphasized by the game, and it's part of the marketing. It's the whole thing. This isn't us apropos of nothing saying this. If
anyone knows the game at all, they'll know we're not. This is an original source content.
The cashier in the shop when I bought the game also wanted to talk to me a lot about the big lady. So it's
even worse, Joel. It wasn't that he wanted to talk to you about the big lady while you were buying it. He wanted to talk to you about the big boobed lady while you were returning the game. Yeah, because we accidentally bought 2 copies because
we're overzealous with our pre-ordering.
Well, when I asked Joel, have you pre-ordered this? He said no, and he had. Okay, so
segueing seamlessly into an episode that is fraught with dissatisfaction and hatred within a family unit. We have watched once Older and Far Away, Buffy episode, and what I might kick off with is if you can tell us a bit, Brian, about what the title Hecka means.
Sure. Well, I'm not an original source for this. The title refers to the novel The Empire of the Sun by J.G. Ballard, who which I haven't read. I have seen the film, but I saw it a long, long time ago. The film is very notable for being a very early performance by Christian Bale, and is the original source of the. Why do I keep saying original source? It is the origin. It's the origin of the joke that I've definitely made on this podcast before, where my dad gaslighted me for months because I was like, "Oh, there's Christian Bale," and my dad was like, "You mean ballet?" I was like, "No, it's pronounced Bale." And he was like, "No, Brian, it's pronounced ballet." And I was like, "No, you're wrong, Dad." And he insisted on this for a long time and still does to this day. And he knows fine well that it's Bale, but it was because we were watching Empire of the Sun. So Empire of the Sun is a novel about a boy who is who gets separated from his parents during World War II and ends up in a Japanese prisoner of war camp. And he, while there, comes to, find some satisfaction in the... People kind of generally ignore him, and he finds satisfaction in being a... like kind of part of the scenery or whatever. Eventually he is released upon the end of World War II, but returns to the camp because he finds the outside world just like scary and without purpose. And then at the end of the novel and the movie, he is reunited with his parents, and then the novel finishes with the line, or not with the line, I think I'm not sure if these are the final words of the novel. This is when part of the conclusion is, for all their affection for him, they seemed older and far away. Mm-hmm. So I think there's a very clear line from that context. And also it's important to bear in mind that the episode when Dawn is in school, the thing they're being taught is Empire of the Sun. So, of course, it kind of runs through. And I like it. I like it as a little literary note because it is reflective of what's going on here. Dawn, finding herself in a difficult situation, is distancing herself from Buffy because Buffy no longer feels like a source of comfort and security to her. So, and Buffy, of course, is the titular person who is older and far away. It's kind of quite sad.
Yeah, absolutely. There's definitely melancholy to it. So we have kind of I would say a very paper thin premise for why they're stuck in the house. We have two motivating factors, and I think we can see reverse engineer how this episode was constructed. Yeah, they want them all to be trapped in the house, and for the various pressures from that. Usually it's a demon that does a bad thing, a monster. But they decided that they wanted to bring in this Halfrick element to set up
who I quite like personally. Yeah,
to set up like onions and other stuff further down the road, and to give a bit more of a conversation about why it was happening. So they're like, okay, well, it can't be then that the monster in the house is Halfrick because she's not going to be going grrr. So they introduce this additional demon who lives in a sword, which Buffy just happens to pick up the sword and bring back to the house in the opening. So it's all quite like on the page there, but really the premise is just to have a contrived reason. Why would all these people come together? Buffy's birthday. Why wouldn't they leave and give up and sog off straight away, etc.? And it's this like progressive the wish that Dawn accidentally kind of instigates has them initially not really realizing that they're not leaving, and then eventually kind of actually being physically trapped within the house. But yeah, it's interesting because we get there's so much reference to and so much conversation about vengeance demons in this show without ever really understanding how they work in some ways. For sure. Because I think it's a weirdly persistent element of the mythos that vengeance demons kind of trick the wisher into making the wish, which both Halfrick and Anya have done now. And like, to what end? Like, do they have a quota they want to meet? Do they personally get satisfaction from it? Because there's always the implication that each demon does it according to what their own damage is, essentially. So it's kind of a weird one for a premise.
It for sure is. It is an unusual episode. Apparently it's structured very similar to or based on a Twilight Zone episode. Maybe the child who's controlling everyone. Is that right? Does he trap everyone in the house at some point?
Yeah, that sounds about right. Yeah, like the closest reference for that episode is obviously the Simpsons episode where Bart turns Homer into a Jack in the Box. That's the same. That's based on the same Twilight Zone episode.
Yeah. So within that, I agree that the premise is written for, if you get me, they came up with the premise first and then wrote the elements around it. The sword stuff, total nonsense. What was your overall feeling about the episode?
What was my overall feeling about the episode? I didn't love it. I didn't hate it. I think I thought there was some parts of it that I liked. I thought that relatively speaking, everyone was in their voice, but the voice isn't particularly likable for some of them at the moment. Yeah, I felt it was very much an episode that is bringing a lot of different personal crises just to the brink so they can be tipped over soon. And it led to, while believable, it led to a lot of the characters being a little less likable then we will go on. Like Anya
specifically Anya, I think,
Anya is quite unlikable in this episode, to the extent where I almost thought it was going to be that she was in some way under a spell with the way that she starts kind of criticizing Dawn, going through her stuff, all that kind of really negative language. Buffy obviously having her issues, but like not particularly massively defensible here in some ways, and yeah, Dawn probably at one of the hikes of her being like clearly identified as a slightly neglected child, but like quite causing like very much making it about her while people are being stabbed.
Yeah, it's a funny one. So a couple of things there. I think, yes, I actually think the representation of Anya in this episode is not in keeping with previous representations of her. Maybe that's just because Emma Caulfield is a very likable actor and makes everything that Anya does very likable. But in this episode where she has a couple of points, she insists that Willow tried to use magic to let them escape, which in some ways you're like, listen, that's reasonable. Willow probably should do magic in instances where like you are saving the life of a man who's bleeding out. It is more important. Like if you came to an alcoholic and you said, I'm going to shoot this man in the head if you don't have a drink, I think that alcoholic would have a drink, probably, right? Anyway, with that, I think it really the shitty drug magic lesbianism metaphor,
it continues to kind of collapse under its own weight.
It collapses under its own weight, and it serves Anya badly by this point, because like the reality is, like, as Anya understands it, this should be a reasonable request. And yes, it's difficult, and yes, it might lead to some difficulty for Willow personally, like, on an ongoing basis, but it is better than like putting multiple people's lives in peril to some degree. But then she's portrayed as being just the instigator of all the difficulty through the episode. Anya, like the stuff with Dawn where she, the way they kind of phrase it is like Dawn has been stealing extensively from the magic box, and Anya's not happy about that, and that's reasonable. You don't but the way she's portrayed as being is like, unreasonably upset about it, but then other people are reasonable to be upset about it. It's a weird one where Anya specifically is being set up as being a reasonable sparring partner for Xander's awfulness, and coming up to hell's bells. Like, you kind of feel like what they're doing here is finding a way to have Xander reasonably not want to marry Anya, and that just hasn't been present in the text at this point. She has her foibles, she's an unusual person, but she's very clear about who she is. She's not hiding anything,
Yeah, I think I agree. I think this was more of a throwback to the season 3 Anya that would be like, I don't understand humanity at all, let's leave town kind of thing. I was trying to draw that back in, and as I have to, my disclaimer I have to return to often is that I do realize this is a television show, but at the same time, the way that everyone reacted to Dawn's kleptomania, as various articles about and essays about Buffy love to refer to as her kleptomania, it's just not. It's like, it's real uneven. It's like, I sometimes it really reminds me of is that whole thing with Riley and Spike being like, oh, you're stealing her underwear, you rascal, get out of this house. It's like, also the reactions here are like morally disappointing her as if she's a peer, but also not quite engaging with the actual disciplinary aspect of it in kind of a regular way or anything,
and certainly not engaging with the cause of it. I mean, the episode I think touches on it a little too lightly, but like, this is a child who has lost her mother within the last year. Her sister died extensively, and once she came back to life, is incredibly emotionally distanced. This is not. This sounds like so like melodramatic the way I'm reading it, but like, this is how the text is presenting it. This is what the evidence. This is what the text has attempted to communicate it to us to this point, well or not. And she, in the beginning of this episode, she is just like clearly just a 15-year-old who is walking around incredibly alone. I saw a lot of like arguments about, like, I think it's funny. I think a lot of I was reading a couple of like forum posts and stuff about this. A lot of people see Dawn as being culpable in a way that they never did for Buffy, if you get me. Because while Buffy, up until her 18th birthday, absolutely was a child, that's always brought out as a, well, she's a literal child. Of course she's scared, of course she will make mistakes. And when Dawn is doing it, it's like, well, surely she should have grown up enough already to not do this. Like, no. You know, people like at the age of 15 know absolutely nothing. That person's a literal child, you know? So I don't know. I have a lot of. She definitely like the get out in the same tone that she used upon finding out that she was the key, which I think is literally a year ago textually. It's very piercing and annoying, but also it's hard not to have a lot of sympathy for Dawn. Like, you know, 15-year-olds don't understand the full consequences of their actions. That's why they're not adults. And also, the consequences of her actions in this situation are she said something flippantly to a guidance counselor, which should not have ramifications. And then when everyone was experiencing this difficulty, she was also like, I'm experiencing a difficulty and I'm removing myself over here. You know, it's not like she was like, well, I could help you escape, but I'm not going to because I'm pissed off. She literally doesn't understand. She doesn't know. Yeah,
there's like, she doesn't know what's happening. There's a kind of a weird kind of fudgy part in the middle where it's almost presented like she does, you know, she starts saying things like, I didn't mean for this to happen. That's before she has any idea what has happened. Yep. Do you know what I mean? So it's like she doesn't know. Like, no one knows what's happened. It's only Anya very quickly who deduces it from context clues. And yeah, I can't help but look at Dawn and be like, okay, why would a girl in this position be stealing the way she is? And it's like, it's very obvious to me she just wants to have a sense of control over something.
Control, and there's also, like, I mean, multiple ways to interpret it. Like, a very specific cry for help of, you know, hopefully if I do enough wrong things, someone will notice
me.
And I mean, like, she didn't take the security tag off the leather jacket.
Rookie mistake.
Buffy. But rookie mistake indeed. But like, either she's trying to have control or trying to find some pleasure in a situation where she's like experiencing extreme loneliness and all this stuff. I don't know. I find conversations about Dawn in the Buffy fandom to be just fucking stupid. Anyway,
I think also we need to engage with how, in many ways, fundamentally uncool our protagonists are.
Yeah,
like, this is Buffy's birthday party, you know.
She has no friends.
She has no friends. The only people they bring is this avowed kind of flat reg shirt character from Xander's work site. Yeah. And this like this hilarious trope of Sophie, the girl from the Double Meat Palace, who just has loads of allergies or whatever.
Yeah.
And then Clem, who for whatever reason, Clem is quite personable. Yeah.
And Clem and Spike weren't invited.
Yeah, Clem, whose name is apparently Clement.
Oh yeah,
his given name, which I didn't realize that. And then and just the whole it's actually probably one of the most authentic part of the episodes, because you know when you go to a party or an event where it's just not quite working. Yeah. And like Spike is like
the nightmare is like, you know, the nightmare space between a quiet, cozy, very relaxed evening amongst friends, and you know, when you try to do a slightly big thing but you couldn't find enough people to do the big thing, and you get stuck in this middle space of shit awfulness.
Exactly, like as you're well aware, Brian, it walks in room 101 for me for my whole life. This fear of like throwing an event and it needs to have more people and just not enough people turned up. Like, it is the worst concept. And then you have things like, you know, they're trying to play Monopoly. People are kind of drinking, but they're kind of like not getting drunk. And Spike just keeps saying sexually suggestive things, but also like there's just like a lot of like normies here as well. You know? So it's like, it's all a weird vibe. And then like Spike puts like Buffy's hands down his pants in the hallway. Like it's all just weird energy. Yeah. Which is but it's appropriate. Like it's that's what it's meant to be. Yeah.
With that, I would say there's one of the interesting things to note here is Mark Field talks about it extensively. If we are reading Dawn as Buffy's adolescent self or child self that she had to put away to some degree, you can kind of really see what's happening here in terms of a metaphor within that metaphorical system of Buffy the Vampire Slayer as Buffy, child to grown up. Yeah. In this instance, she's had to very much put away her childhood. You know, she had to stop being a child in terms of like her mother died, she died, and she now has to deal with just existing in the world without protection, without buffer, you know, and in that way she has fully neglected to kind of carefully put away the childish part of herself, or to carefully take care of that, which represents Dawn. And when she has done that, she has unfortunately trapped herself in an Arrested Development kind of moment, not the TV show, but an emotional state. So I think that kind of like that reads quite well for this episode, that like, you know, Dawn does reflect Buffy's inner trauma to some degree, and the kind of the thing that she needs to protect and she isn't. I think Barfield also notes that this episode is very much a blueprint episode for the season finale, which I would agree with. Insofar as, and spoilers here if you haven't watched season 6 recently or haven't watched it at all, but in the season finale, Buffy, of course, her challenge for the episode is not to stop Willow for the final episode. It is to protect Dawn, and she commits to doing that when it is beyond it being when it potentially threatens the world. She's like, no, I'm sticking here with Dawn, basically. And this episode, the conclusion of the episode, which I found very, very sweet, and I really liked, of everyone going out and being like, oh, thank God we can leave, and Buffy, having been stuck inside by Dawn for whatever 2 weeks, closes the door to spend more time with Dawn, because that is what's needed here. Yeah, I you can kind of see the whole the transposition there. I think it makes a lot of sense. Yeah,
I think it works. It's a chewy episode in some ways, and it's very deliberate. It's like, this is the episode we need to do for episode 14. So there's maybe a lack of organic storytelling there, but I think it achieves what they want to achieve with that. Yeah.
I'm trying to think what else we could talk about. Oh, I suppose the big thing to talk about there then is also then the Willow Tara stuff.
Absolutely.
So again, as you were noting during the episode, Tara unfortunately gets better and better as a character as the season goes on, and in some ways you kind of get the sense that she's being written better because they want to have an impact on her death, which is coming along very soon. But it's going to be effective, because like this episode she was very effective, and there was she both advocates both for Buffy, and Buffy, like, you know, against Spike to some degree, where Spike is like, she's like saying, Spike, leave her alone, she doesn't want you to do this, basically. She commiserates with Buffy's difficulty. She even lends her a bit of queer slang in a moment where Buffy says like, I'm not ready to tell everyone, I'm not ready to, and Tara says, come out. So it's like, well, you're I'm relating your struggle to my struggle. It's a bonding moment. And then additionally, when Willow is feeling pressured to do magic to help them get out of the house, Tara specifically comes to her aid and says that, you know, they're going to have to go through her if they want to make Willow do this, which I think is very clearly a reflection of family. And the moment where she felt so...
The episode family, yeah.
Exactly. She felt so comforted by Buffy's insistence that Tara was one of them, and that you'd have to go through Buffy if they want to get to get to Tara. I thought it was a really nice moment. I think Tara, like, a real star of the season, you know?
Yeah, and such a sweet progression. I think that, like, one of the funny things we know about Buffy and Tara initially is Buffy was atypically like, who is this girl? I don't care.
Yeah.
And Xander says to Willow that Tara is invited because Buffy's basically grown closer with her and she's got a lot of support from her. So I really do like this arc for Tara, where she really gets to define who she is outside of the context of being Willow's lesbian girlfriend. Yeah. And really cements her, I think, as an incredibly strong and you know, independent, fully kind of developed character. All that's quite strong, and it is a classic, and not cruel, but a classic setup for an emotional fall, where, you know, it's easy to forget with season 6 how much Willow does make an effort and how things do improve. You know, it's kind of is moving in the right direction. I can see it coming, like that moment where like Tara dies. It's like, as a viewer, you're like, oh fuck, like this is going to like explode, and it does. Yeah,
it truly does. And we'll have to wrestle with that when we get to it. Okay, should we move into the dusting, Joel?
Absolutely.
Great. Okay, so do you have any Buffy bits for me?
Yeah, so as I alluded to, Richard, the character here, is very much set up intentionally as a kind of a disposable character who, in the vein of the classic trope of a red shirt from Star Trek, The original series, i.e. the characters who were beamed down to the planet solely to be killed in the first moments by the monster, and appropriately Richard is wearing a red shirt in this episode and is taken out of action by the monster post haste. So we have that. We also have I also appreciated Willow's suggestion that she's joining a Spellcasters Anonymous group.
Yeah.
And that they're working on the name. And I was like, what would be a good name for that? Is it just Magic Anonymous?
Yeah, I don't know.
It's inconsistent, I think, because alcoholics, right? That's the
No, I know. Sorry. Shut up, please.
Okay.
Clearly, the name of it is going to be X-Hexes.
X-Hexes. Okay, yeah, I'll take that.
X-Hex is a band now, in fairness, but whatever.
But like, alcoholics are the group of people, but Narcotics Anonymous is a substance.
Yeah, exactly.
You don't call a person with drug abuse issues a narcotic. Anyway.
It's because because the word drug is so excessively stigmatized, and then additionally narcotics cover a lot of different things where they are actually Narcotics Anonymous will help people who have addiction to prescribed medication that was prescribed to them and isn't it isn't a
no, it's not a legal drug or whatever.
Well, exactly. Well, it wasn't prescribed as a legal drug like opioids in America. It's like, let's not even go there. Absolutely insane.
I don't think we'll solve that in the next few weeks.
Yep.
And I also appreciate usually this kind of stuff is already cringy, but I think Halfrick delivered it well, where she was like, we're not vengeance demons, we actually prefer the term justice demons.
I love that.
FYI.
Yeah.
I thought that was a nice little tip of the hat.
Yeah, I have a couple of Buffy Bits for you too there. So this is the final celebration of Buffy's birthday. In total, those happened in season 2 in Surprise Innocence, in season 3 in the Cruciamentium, which the episode was called. What was the episode called?
I used to know this.
Anyway, the challenge, the something. Anyway. We didn't have a celebration of Buffy's birthday in season 4. In season 5, the episode that they celebrate Buffy's birthday is the episode where Dawn finds out that she's the key, and I cannot remember the name of that episode otherwise. And then this is the final one. Spike does say in this episode, your birthdays always are end in a disaster. Could you not just consider not doing it in the future? And she doesn't. One of the songs playing in the episode is a Rilo Kiley song during the party. The song's Picture of Success, and it's noted on the Wikipedia page as being unusual because the line Mexico can fucking wait can be heard very clearly in the lyrics, and obviously the word fucking is very unlikely to be used on TV otherwise in this pre-watershed kind of time period, and also not on cable, I presume, in the US. It's funny because in Ireland and the UK you can the concept of airing curse words in on like your national broadcasters is 100% allowed, and it just should happen after the watershed, which is about 9 p.m. But what's interesting about that as well is Rilo Kiley, it's from their first album, which is called Take Off and Landing, and I don't think it's very good personally, but every single other one of their albums is probably a masterpiece. But it's interesting as well because Blake, who's the guitarist and singer from the band, Blake Lively, no, that's an actress, I can't remember his name, but was Michael the Warlock in the episode Gingerbread. Yeah. So that's kind of cool.
He was the titular what was it, witch boy? What was it?
Yeah,
boy witch.
Yeah,
was
exactly.
Which is my Twitter name for a long time.
It was, yeah. And this episode is notable for me because it is the only episode which doesn't have a Wikipedia page on Wikipedia of every episode of Buffy. I find that really odd.
Curse dropped in the house.
Yeah.
So the Buffy birthday episodes are Surprise Innocence, Helpless, which is season 3 of the Cruciamentium, Blood Ties, which is the one where Dawn finds out she's a key, and then now Ogre and Far Away.
Yeah. Okay. Do you have any fashion notes for me there, Joel?
Yeah, so we see Dawn is wearing a top that says, for some reason, Foxy Brown on it. Once again, I won't try to describe a woman's top because I will fail. Xander's wearing a massive, like, Chris Angel Las Vegas magician style shirt that has like these big white peas or bubbles on it. It is like a piece of fabric that you would make a wizard's cloak out of. It is utterly bizarre. And yeah, we see Dawn try on the kind of typical leather jacket. Yeah, the she steals for for Buffy. And then I'm always fascinated by how Clem is dressed, because Clem dresses like a peasant, like a medieval peasant. Or like, you know, someone who has their own kind of clay pottery studio in California or something like that, you know. So I think that's quite funny as well.
One thing I should note is that Willow does give Buffy a massager for her birthday, and it's very clearly just a vibrator.
Yeah, a personal massager you can take with you on patrol.
Yeah. Anyway, I'm gonna go pee. Okay, and otherwise in fashion, I also noted that Buffy is wearing a red, like, shearling jacket, but the inside is like a very fluffy, very bright magenta, and it's just awful. She's also wearing a red hat, which I hated. Xander is wearing one of the worst shorts he's ever worn. It's so unfortunate. It's so big. It is a really rude color of blue. Did you already say this?
Yeah, that was
oh shit,
the Wizard's cloak shirt I was describing.
Sorry, I wasn't listening because I was busy thinking about peeing.
Yeah, you really did need to pee. Are you going to leave that pee break in the edit? If I keep saying that you need to pee, will you be able to edit around it? The fact that you had to take a break to go pee.
Yes, I'll be able to edit that out, no problem. Anyway, so, and then I think that's all my fashion notes. Okay, Deck End Joel, do you have one for us?
Yeah, one sword demon broken over Buffy's knee. We never get his backstory. Maybe he had a family, we don't know.
Yep.
He lived on a sword. Everyone just got over that bit. He also phased through the wall. We didn't mention that at all. He was able to phase through the walls, which is like his USP. Yeah. That's the only death. Richard Gregg shirt apparently gets to the hospital and it's fine, we assume. Yeah.
Yep. Okay, and then do you have a rating for me?
Yeah, I might give this 7.6 master crafting weapons chests.
7.6. Tell me more.
Yeah, like I think it was neither a classic or particularly memorable episode of Buffy, but not bad on what it was trying to achieve. And I really like the Tara stuff. And I thought that some of the comedic moments were very good. And I think that it's a decent premise for a Monster of the Week setting. But I brought it down from 10 just because I feel that there's lots of it that doesn't actually come together. It's like it's a little slapdash in places, but I guess is where we need to go.
Getcha. So I'm actually going to give it just the 6.5 Justice Demons out of 10. I did have Justice Demons wrote in my note in big old letters, so I'm allowed to use it as a rating. Yeah, I think that the episode, what it attempts to do is interesting. I think the execution is incredibly poor. Not fair. Incredibly poor. It's reasonably poor. Notably poor for a Buffy episode, where the characterization in the characters is not great. The episode does too good a job of making the whole conundrum feel incredibly long. Like I was bored watching the episode, but I was also on my phone, to be honest.
If you got any feedback on your audio there, is because I accidentally walked my glasses into the mic and scared myself and tried to stay quiet while you were talking.
I know. So I don't think it's much of an episode of anything. I have no major problem with it. I like a lot of the things that it does, but I don't think it does a great job of it.
Yeah, fair enough.
So should we move into the Cordelia chase?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're on the Cordelia chase this week. We are watching and have watched Couplet. And this follows on immediately from the previous episode with the arrival of Grusalug, the Gru, Cordelia's new beau. And we see a competition between the two, essentially. And the episode really revolves around the competition, or the competition that Angel feels he's in with Gru for Cordelia's affections, and how Gru is as effective a fighter as he is in many ways. He is able to go out in the sun, which Angel obviously isn't able to do. He's able to potentially have children with Cordelia, which obviously Angel won't be able to do. And yeah, I've kind of feelings of inadequacy on that, and the kind of monster. A couple of weird monsters actually. There's actually I think there's two monsters in this episode. One is just a straight up demon that Gru recognizes and that is used as an example of how he fights better than Angel. But then there's this whole thing where a plant demon underground is using AOL message boards to contact lonely men and lure them down into his pit. That's almost like a side story that comes in. Lure them down into his pit to use them for nutrients. And this is where Angel gets his redemptive moment, because he's able to do something Gru isn't able to do, which essentially uses cold dead heart as like a lure, you know. And we see Gru gets a haircut for various reasons. For various reasons, it's implied that Cordelia cuts his hair, and yet it comes out looking like a styled haircut. Yeah. And she puts him in Angel's clothes, and there's a real sense of competition there. Perfectly fun episode, I think, to watch. I think it is a slightly bittersweet episode, because this is in many ways the end of the carefree era of Angel to a degree. We have a lot here about how Cordelia might be able to find a spell to sleep with Gru without losing her vision, so she wants to be a champion. We have the different plots within the crew of who loves who, etc. But what happens after this episode is Angel accepts that Cordelia is with Gru, gives them money to go on a holiday, and we have this sting at the end of the episode where Wesley has translated the prophecy and says that the father will kill the son. And we go downhill from here into Wesley breaking away from the group. Eventually, I believe he kidnaps Connor.
He attempts to kidnap Connor.
Kidnap Connor. I think it's the end of this season where he gets nearly brutally, like he gets stabbed in the neck. His throat slit. Angel, I think by the end of the season, tries to kill him with a pillow. And Wesley specifically actually never sees what we would consider the real Cordelia again until her brief appearance in season 5, because she goes from here to holiday to being a higher power to coming back with amnesia and being possessed by Jasmine and so on and so forth. So it's an enjoyable adventure episode. We really moved into the comedy era of this show where it's just David Boreanaz just mugging the camera for laugh reactions, and Gru is like a nice simple country hero kind of character. So I would probably give it, I'm more than comfortable giving it a 7 feminist gestures. It's an enjoyable episode, a funny one, but I do feel bittersweet about the fact that this is kind of like, downhill isn't the right word, but as I said, there's always a point in the show where after which your friends are never quite, everyone after this is older and far away. Put it that way.
I'm actually going to give it an 8 fail feminist gestures for the same reason, is that it felt sad but uncomplicated in some ways. I thought the note at the end where Angel is saying, no, I don't have Cordelia, but I have the only thing that's important to me, and that's Connor. And then the stuff about Wesley bringing the background. There was a moment, I find the not the calm before the storm. I suppose it is the calm before the storm, but I think that's too cliched. And oh my God, Joel, look outside.
Of the storm,
it is literally, it's gone from being like a bright summer's day to it's going to, like, there's going to be a storm.
Like a saucer's passed overhead kind of thing.
So, so I think I like that moment in TV shows and in narratives. I find that very comforting and very halcyon daisy, and I find that a very intriguing concept. So that kind of pushes that for me. And if it's an 8, it's probably like a 7.6, rather than an 8.4. But I will give it an 8. I liked Wesley in this episode. I think the sadness he communicates about the Fred stuff and the Angel stuff is quite effective. I think David Boreanaz does a good job of playing both the comedic stuff here and the wistful stuff. The only thing I would think to note about it is that I think Cordelia, as sometimes happens with Cordelia's character, she's underwritten here, where she's portrayed as being unaware, emotionally unaware of what's going on around her, whereas previously she is the truth seer and the truth sayer, and the kind of the bullshit ignorer. So her inability to see all this stuff with Angel, or to kind of identify what's going on here and seeing kind of the implications of all this, I don't fully believe. But I think it works reasonably well for the episode regardless. Yeah. No, I think that's accurate. It's a good watch. Yeah, no, I enjoyed watching it. Okay. That brings us here to our conclusion. Thank you, as always, for joining us. We hope you're well. If you enjoyed this episode, please do let us know. Tell your friends and tell your moving persons. Okay. With the van, with the moving house theme. And we will see you guys next time, right here, for Buffy Boys. Well, indeed. Talk to you then. Cheers. Bye.